And once again, we want to thank you for being here. We begin tonight with those new images that are shedding light on the situation in Uvalde and the police response to that school shooting that killed 19 students and 2 teachers. This picture from surveillance footage at Robb Elementary shows multiple officers inside the school with rifles and at least 1 ballistic shield. And the time stamp on this is 11:52 in the morning. And as you may recall, that is 58 minutes that went by before they then entered the classroom and took out that shooter. Investigators reportedly believe this new footage shows officers had more than enough firepower and protection to enter the classroom earlier than they did. There are also new reports tonight that 77 minutes went by before officers even tried to open the classroom doors. Tomorrow, Texas lawmakers will be hearing more from key law enforcement witnesses about the police response that day and putting together an accurate timeline of the events. Joining me now is Colonel Allen West, a former congressman and former chairman of the Texas Republican Party. Sir, we appreciate your time tonight. Thank you for being here. The optics in terms of the police response aren't good in what we're seeing on social media circulate tonight.
No, they aren't, and it's a pleasure being with you, Marnie, because when you look at that, it reminds me of a very simple maxim we operated under in the United States Army and all combat forces, and that's warriors move to the sound of the guns. And you take whatever resources you have and you go in there and you put yourself together in a 4 or 5 man stack, and you make sure that you get in there to neutralize the assailant, that shooter. It should not have been that much time when he had free reign inside of that school. And it just goes back to show that we still are not learning the lessons that should have been learned when you come out of Parkland, Florida, and Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, when we need to have people that have been cross-trained. There should be a cross-leveling of equipment, and the person on the ground should be able to make the decision that they're going to take charge and they're going to get people in there to rectify the situation. We need to find out who made the stand-down order and what caused that paralysis of action.
Well, and the heartbreak, Colonel, is multiplied by the families who have been directly impacted by the loss of their children that day and their loved ones. I want to play a piece of sound that my colleague Leland Vittert interviewed one of the dads who lost a daughter in the shooting. Let's listen to what he had to say.
As soon as they heard the gunshot, they should have rushed in. You know, that didn't happen. You know, more policemen came in increments. They were there unprepared. You know, they should have had shields in the cars. They should have had,
Do you think they were unprepared, or were they cowardly? Were they disorganized?
I say all three. Honestly, in my opinion.
Colonel, it is easy to second-guess the police response until we have an accurate picture of the timeline and the events of that day. But don't parents like that and others deserve transparency and less finger-pointing from the investigators and from the police that day?
No, you're absolutely right. And when you think about the optics, again, not just now we're seeing that surveillance video inside the school, but remember what we saw outside the school when we saw the police that were handcuffing parents when they were detaining and keeping parents from going in there. The parents were screaming, do something, take action. We had the one mother who was handcuffed, and when she was uncuffed, she ran in there and got her 2 kids out. So a lot of people are going to say, why did the police, with their body armor, with their rifles, with that 1 ballistic shield that you saw there, why didn't they go in and do something?
Also in question was this door, and was it in fact locked or unlocked as the officers were waiting outside, and did the officers check it? That will be one thing that will likely come up in the testimony and the hearings this week. How critical is that in the investigation?
Well, it's absolutely critical, because one of the things, you should have had some type of drills, active shooter drill. People should have known about this, and there should have been some type of shutdown mechanism. We just had a shooting down in Duncanville, just south of me here in Dallas, and everything worked perfectly. Someone was able to hit a centralized button and shut down all of the access doors and what have you. And we need to get to a single point of entry, point of exit into these schools. We've got to do better protecting our children, because we obviously can protect a Super Bowl or sporting venue or concert a lot better than we're protecting our children right now.
And what do you want to hear from Chief Arredondo in terms of his leadership that day, his role, his decision making?
I want to know who made the decision that caused that paralysis for 77 minutes, because everything should have been deferred to the person that is on the ground. That's how I operated as a commander in combat. I deferred to the person that was in contact with the enemy, not trying to second guess them from some command post or someplace further away.
Before I let you go, there is a lot of discussion, not just in your state of Texas, but around the country about gun laws and what we need to do now. Where do you think the focus should be, not just after Uvalde, but all of these school shootings? Where's the middle ground?
Well, I think the commonality we need to look at is these juveniles that are having these violent behaviors. They should be input into the system. We've seen that with Parkland. We saw that with the shooter in Buffalo. We saw that in the shooter in Uvalde. Furthermore, there was a breakdown in the system. The Uvalde shooter lived with his grandfather. His grandfather had a criminal record. His criminal record was a felony offense. He could not have any weapons near him. He couldn't purchase any weapons. So when the shooter put down his grandfather's address on his 4473 background check, that should have sent up a red flag. We don't need new laws. We need the system to do what is necessary, and we need to enforce the laws that we have on the books right now.
Colonel West, we appreciate your time tonight on this important issue. And again, we'll be following the hearings in Texas tomorrow as we further learn what happened that day at Uvalde.
Thank you very much, Marnie. Have a good night.
You too. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.